Uncle Dan,
Hey!
you know,
Ho!
we don't need another hero.
Hey!
We don't need to
sorry.
know the way home. I think Uncle Doug's got something very special on deck for us today.
Is that something very special? The fact that when Uncle Doug isn't allowed out of his house for too long, all he knows is movie references?
I think we're all consuming a lot of media these days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love the fact you think before the quarantine I was some kind of
Social butterfly.
some kind of
actually
more
did stuff.
domesticated creature.
Right.
Well, dear uncles, Friday was my birthday. And before you or any listeners...
Wait a minute. I didn't even know that.
I don't make a big deal of it, and here's why.
I want to celebrate it.
No.
I celebrate you right now.
Before you or any listeners wish me a happy birthday, if you listened to my segment or my heaven last week, sorry again, Michael Eric, you'll know that the pressures of COVID-19 and widespread racial injustice in Donald Trump's America are taking their toll on old Uncle Doug. So celebrating a mid-40s birthday in that environment was never really going to lift my spirits. A friend of mine texted me birthday wishes and asked me what I was going to do, to which the only answer is nothing. Even if I wanted to celebrate the passing of one more mile marker on the road to oblivion, we can't have parties, can't go out for a drink, can't get a group together to go to dinner. So I guess I'll just stare out the window as another sun sets and blow out my single candle on my gas station brownie. That's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
So
You went into a gas station? Man.
no, I've had it for like 4 months. It's still soft. So given that it's my birthday week and, it's up to me anyway, today I want to cash in a personal indulgence and talk about something that's a bit of a stretch for this show. I want to talk about a made-up religion.
Yeah, because all the other ones are real.
Exactly. It has long been the editorial position of this podcast, and indeed every atheist in history, that all religions are made up. Some, however, are more made up than others. Most, of course, are invented to part fools from their money and, if possible, virgins from their parents. But some hokey religions and ancient weapons are made up to do no such thing. We have talked on the show about various religions made up for no other reason than to tell a story, and in some cases point out the futility of religious belief itself. We've talked about Jediism, the Klingon religion, and Crom, the religion of Conan the Barbarian, for example. And longtime listeners will no doubt remember that I will sneak in a Dune reference any chance I get. So today, for my birthday, I want to depart from an actual world gone mad to talk about a fictional world gone mad. Today I want to talk about the religions of and the religious themes of Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
All right.
For those of you who have not seen Fury Road, or indeed any of the Mad Max movies, you are both missing out on some of the most iconic, beautiful, culturally relevant cinema in history, and also fortunate enough to have missed out on some of the most ridiculous, over-the-top, and schlocky filmmaking ever. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Luckily, the four movies have only a tangential relationship to each other and can therefore be seen independently. You don't have to have seen Mad Max to watch Road Warrior. You don't have to have seen Road Warrior to watch Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And, of course, you don't have to have seen any of them to watch Mad Max Fury Road. It doesn't hurt to watch them in order, and if you're looking for a very weird weekend, go for it. But it's not necessary.
Yeah, as the world is
and
approaching...
I am looking for a very weird weekend. So
As the world is approaching those strange realities, I don't know that a marathon is really what you want to do right now.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's one school of thought that just says you're training.
Yeah. Here's the right shoulder pads. Here's the right feather
Right.
boa.
Exactly.
You're going to need a mohawk.
For people, and I'm guessing mostly boys of a certain age, our concept of a post-apocalyptic world is pretty much defined by George Miller's vision of roided-out, mohawked marauders in nitro-blasting funny cars fighting in the desert for the last drop of gasoline.
Yes.
It's as imprinted on my brain as Frozen is for anyone under 14.
Right.
Each movie has its iconic moments, no more incredible than the final moment in Thunderdome, which I know Uncle Mark is a huge fan of.
Oh, my God. First of all, if you haven't seen Beyond Thunderdome is a very underappreciated movie. It's kind of amazing. And not solely because Tina Turner is in a chainmail dress driving a rocket engine across the desert. But it's this. So it ends in this huge chase where the goons from Bartertown are chasing down Max, and cars are classic flipping, exploding. Everything's coming to pieces. He's wiping out all of her guys. And his car, Max's thing, finally crashes, and he goes tumbling across the desert, lays laying there in the sand. And for some reason, she walks up to him. This guy who's just like ruined everything, ruined the entire civilization she's built, right? She walks up to him and looks down at him, and she could just totally smoke him right there, right? And she looks down at him and goes, "We make quite a pair, don't we, Raggedy Man?" and walks away. And then the end credits. That's the end of the movie. It is the most bizarre bananas movie ending ever.
I swear they got to the last day of shooting and the sun was setting, and they're like, just wing it. We got
There was no cocaine left, and they're like, we got to get out of here.
That's right.
So I don't know if you're going to talk about this, Doug, but there is a sub-religion in Thunderdome. And I don't know if that's part of your segment.
No, I'm sticking with Fury Road. I wanted to kind of stay.
Thunderdome has that amazing beginning sequence where the children who survived that plane crash live in that gulch. And they've built this, and there's no adults survived the crash, and they've built this religion around Captain Walker and Mrs. Walker.
It's almost a cargo cult.
Yeah, from like the safety slideshow at the beginning of the. It's really an amazing little bit. So anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay.
But we got to get to Chrome spray paint related.
Yeah, to
That's
Valhalla.
right. Today we're going to stick with Fury Road.
Yeah.
Just because there's some meat to cut off the bone here. And as both your uncles know, I love this movie. I love it for many reasons, but mostly because it is awesome. There is basically no story.
That's a good reason to love a movie, I think.
There's basically no story. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this, there was no screenplay. The entire the entire movie was conceptualized only in storyboards because Miller and the other filmmakers thought a script might actually hinder the storytelling.
Really?
Yeah, no script.
He'd been working on that for 30 years?
Yeah, and if you watch some of the behind the scenes, you'll see in the offices when they're planning the movie, it's like 8 foot by 4 foot boards everywhere, covered in storyboards. It's the craziest thing. So
I've worked on movies.
It's an image heavy film.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's very conceptual and image heavy. I've worked on films where I wish there wasn't a script. But,
it's basically a single fiery car chase. Yet it still somehow manages to tell a story and even manages to effectively build a surprisingly complete world, develop characters, and grapple with some pretty heavy themes. The whole movie is pretty much a case study in how to show, not tell.
Right.
There is exposition, but it's so integrated into the plot that you almost don't realize that it's happening. Rather than stopping the action to describe why it's happening, the exposition is folded into the action. That seems obvious enough, but think about the last movie you watched and how they handled exposition. Probably there was a fish-out-of-water character as a stand-in for the audience that had to have the plot described to them as it progressed. There's a tiny wee bit of that with Max himself, but it's more of to tease out the specific character's motivations, not the world building going on around them. Everyone, including Max, is from that world, and it's through its total immersion in that world that we come to know and understand it. For about a year after I saw the film, every time I would pass a tanker truck on the freeway, I would text a picture of it to Mark and Jesse with lines from the movie.
It's true, and I knew he was going to die Mad Max style under truck tires if he didn't start doing that.
And would that have been the wrong move? All things considered. Others may quibble, and they would of course be wrong, but this is a near perfect movie. No part of it could be removed or changed without lessening its momentum. Many have called it a feminist movie, given that most of the main characters are women fighting for their freedom from physical bondage and sexual slavery. In fact, George Miller asked Eve Ensler, who was the author of the Vagina Monologues, to come and consult with the women in the film about the effects of...
She went to Namibia, right?
She went to Namibia, met with all the women to kind of talk through the effects of sexual violence to give their portrayal more oomph and reality.
It's the very rare female-driven action/sci-fi movie.
Truly.
Yeah.
And granted, every woman in the film is a literal model, but that actually makes sense in the plot, which we'll talk about. And it bears mentioning that Miller was 70 at the time of filming. Yeah. And his most recent films were, and this is true, Happy Feet 1 and 2 and Babe, Pig in the City.
He's got range.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
He's got range.
But by the way, have either of you seen Babe, Pig in the City?
No.
I never have.
Okay, it's absolutely amazing. And
I've heard it's really good.
it's a kids
And weird.
It's very weird, and it's definitely a kids movie, but a very, very dark kids movie. And it wrestles with the themes of racism, the dangers of capitalism and classism, as well as any movie out there. It's absolutely worth watching.
Yeah,
So-
well,
Right.
it's not kosher, so I'm unable, as you know. But,
So
I'll
somehow,
have a goy watch it for me.
yeah, exactly. So somehow this 70-year-old kids movie director convinced a studio to give him millions of dollars to drive souped-up cars around the Namibian desert with no script to revisit a franchise that had been left in the dust 30 years prior. And thank goodness he did, because damn.
Mm-hmm.
The actual filming of this movie is a story for a different day. Let's just focus on the plot and the religious world building. So in some distant, post-apocalyptic, or irradiated, drought-ridden future, a tyrant named Immortan Joe has built a cult of personality / dictatorship based on his control of water. Immortan Joe, by the way, is quite literally what Donald Trump will become if he wins a second term.
Yes. That is terrifyingly true.
It's totally true.
Yeah, the images of him wearing a mask for the first time that are out this past couple days, it might as well be the Immortan Joe thing.
Yeah.
Someone Photoshop that mask onto Donald Trump, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's perfect.
Send it to us.
So Immortan Joe rules over a city set up upon several mesas called the Citadel. The society of the Citadel is highly classist. There are the peasants who dwell on the desert floor, presumably doing the manual labor and suffering from constant thirst and hunger. There is a highly structured warrior class, which is where most of the religious themes are centered. And lastly, there is a small aristocracy, which consists mostly of Immortan Joe, his family and acolytes, and his sexual slaves he uses for breeding purposes. There are two other settlements in the story, Gastown, which refines fuel to oil to fuel their vehicles, and the Bullet Farm, which manufactures bullets to fuel their war weapons. Together with the Citadel, these three proto-states rule the wasteland in a kind of tripolar alliance. The plot...
Just like Nevada.
Exactly. The plot centers around a high-ranking member of the warrior class, Imperator Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron, who has decided to help the 5 current sex slaves of Immortan Joe escape and try to get them to a far-off, fertile land called the Green Place of Many Mothers. In order to do this, she has to hide them in her war rig and battle her way through hostile territory and Immortan Joe's pursuing army, all of this with only one arm. Oh, and there's this guy named Max who's also in the story for some reason, played by Tom
Yeah,
Hardy.
that was the part that always confused me. We had this awesome group of badass women led by the badassest of them, and also a guy.
Yeah, it's just kind of... So
Yeah,
Max...
it's post-apocalyptic mansplaining, Dan. It's never. It's,
Right.
It is one of the only things that will survive nuclear war.
Although it does have the distinct the honor, the prestige of being the most taciturn, quiet mansplainer of
Yeah,
all
he
time.
was
Truly.
very much supporting cast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the titular character, Max, is a wanderer that is captured by the war boys because his blood is not diseased like theirs, and he can be used as a blood donor for sick and dying war boys. He manages eventually to escape this captivity and teams up with Furiosa. The rest of the movie is one enormous chase scene. We don't learn much about the religion of the underclass, except that Immortan Joe holds himself up as their deity and holds power over them with highly ritualized releases of water. His words before releasing a small amount of water to the masses gives a glimpse into the theology he has built. Quote, "I am your redeemer. It is by my hand that you will rise from the ashes of this world." So we know what he thinks of himself.
Classic. That's just classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also don't learn a lot about the religion of the aristocracy. They don't seem to be under the spell of the warrior class's religion. While that religion is highly ritualized and structured, at one point in the plot when things are going bad, one of the escaping sex slaves, the Dag, is spinning through several different types of incantation and prayer. When asked who she's praying to, she responds, "Whoever's listening." Now we get to the religion of the war boys. The war boys themselves are all male and apparently taken from the underclass as children. Because they come from the underclass, most are diseased and suffering from various cancers and tumors. As such, they shave their heads, paint their bodies white, and wear skeletal makeup. Their religion is big into ritual branding and scarring. Most of them are covered in self-inflicted scars. We never do find out if these scars are a form of punishment, a sign of rank or piety, or the results of some kind of tat beer-like self-flagellation ritual, but it's great world building. They are given more to eat and drink than the underclass, so they can engage in warfare. So Immortan Joe has invented a death-worshipping religion to keep them in check. This religion treats their vehicles as sacred. At one point, as the chase is beginning, Warboys can be seen removing steering wheels from an altar, and one of them, Slit, interlinks his fingers in prayer and says, quote, "By my deeds I honor you, V8," and takes the steering wheel. It's so goddamn cool.
He probably doesn't mean the vegetable juice.
No.
Yeah.
Given that most of them are doomed to die of disease, they want nothing more than to die gloriously in battle. We are given several examples of this. Most notably, when a severely injured warboy leaps to his death to blow up an enemy vehicle. If you haven't seen this scene yet, pull it up or look up the definition of the word epic. He first sprays silver paint on his face, which is effectively his death mask, and then demands that the other warboys present witness his act of bravery. When he is blown to bits, his fellow warboys are in a state of near ecstasy that he has managed to achieve a glorious death.
Yeah.
Purity for this religion is symbolized not by white, but by silver. Several times when describing acts of bravery, warboys can be heard saying they were so shiny, so chrome. This also explains the war paint. They do believe in an afterlife, where if they die worthy, they will drive their sanctified vehicles with Immortan Joe forever on the roads of Valhalla. Another common incantation by the warboys is, quote, "I live, I die, I live again." So clearly Joe has mixed in parts of Shia Islam, Norse mythology, and Native American warrior cults to create this religion. And although one of the warboys, Nux, does lose his faith, the religion seems to be working pretty well in fanaticizing the rest of them. There are more questions than answers, but for a made-up religion, and given the fact that we are only getting a glimpse of it, it's pretty convincing. It seems real enough, especially as reflected in its adherents, and it feels like there's so much more to it than what we get to see. And that's what makes this film so engrossing. These guys are part of some futuristic religions, but don't worry about it. That's not what the film is about. Now let's go blow something up. At one point, they team up with the remaining women of the now desolate Green Place, and we get the tiniest hint at their religion, mostly a small gesture when one of them dies, as though they are catching a piece of their departing soul. It's not much, but it paints a little bit of background, and it's wonderful. That would be it. Miller effectively created a background religion that gives his insane movie some surprising grounding and realism. However, I stumbled across a couple articles and some YouTube videos discussing the religious and mythological overtones of the film itself. They're definitely there, but Miller has no interest in hitting you over the head with them, mostly because he's too busy blowing things up. In fact, I hardly noticed them on repeated viewings until it was brought to my attention, mostly because I was too busy watching things blow up. A lot of this comes from a YouTuber named Logos Made Flesh. So he postulates that Max is clearly a father god figure whose blood has the power to save and redeem. His blood is literally used to keep Nux alive long enough to redeem himself through his sacrifice and to save Furiosa's life in the final act. Furiosa herself is obviously a mother goddess whose sole purpose is to protect fertility and life itself. She tries to bring the captive women to the Green Place, obviously an Eden-like garden, only to find that it too has been destroyed by the fall of man. So now reunited with mankind in the form of Max and Nux, they charge back to the Citadel to smash the patriarchy that has caused all of this. Nux becomes the born-again son of Max and Furiosa. For the first act, he's actually tied to Max with an umbilical cord.
Right.
He sees Immortan Joe fail and comes to see the justice of Furiosa's cause, and then he martyrs himself, not for glory, but for the lives of his friends, by sealing off the Canyon Pass. During the battle, Furiosa receives a mortal wound, so Max uses his blood to save her and a bone-handled knife to relieve the pressure of a collapsing lung. He does this by penetrating her side. Their symbolic union is sanctified by blood and consummated by the knife. So, and finally...
And with that guy and you have given the plot of this way more thought than the filmmakers ever did.
I don't know. Miller worked on this for, I think, 30 years. I think
Yeah, he's been forever and ever.
Yeah.
And finally, there's Immortan Joe, clearly not only a villain, but death and Satan himself. His mask is the mouth of a lion, and like the beast in Revelation, he's trying to consume through captivity the newborns of his sexual slaves. Furiosa finally defeats him by tearing that mask and the rest of his face clean off. So I guess the point of all this is there doesn't have to be a point. It's my birthday. But also, Miller is a genius. He's made perhaps the best action movie of all time and stuffed it full of feminist and anti-authoritarian themes and managed to layer in a damning critique of religion to boot. Perhaps one lesson we can learn from this, it turns out that it's not that hard to invent a religion after all.
No,
Do you hear that, Moses, Paul, Muhammad, Joseph, and Elron? It turns out you're not so smart. A kids' movie director invented a religion at least as compelling as yours, as nothing more than background to a series of explosions.
Yeah.
And to all you would-be cult leaders of the future, pump the brakes on the perception of your own intelligence. And if you're going to invent a religion, would it kill you to toss in a car chase?
Fair enough.
So there you go.
That's
If you haven't seen the movie, please see the movie. If you don't like it, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah, don't at anybody. It's his birthday.
That's really fascinating. I wonder. It's too bad Joseph Campbell's not alive to kind of take a turn at that as well. As he deconstructed Star Wars in the same way. But
Yeah.
and something that is really wonderful in a film of that complexity is the lack of over-explaining.
Exactly.
Right? It doesn't.
Right.
You don't have to know everything. You don't
Right.
have to know what that altar was about and what V8, how that came to be, and what their prayers are, and you just know it's there, and it's one of their motivations. It's one of their
Yeah.
driving forces, and why they're so willing to martyr themselves, with such gusto.
Yeah, and
Right.
it just paints a background, behind all of the action that makes it, in spite of how ridiculous it is, and it's ridiculous. Fuel is a scarce resource, and they are all driving monster cars welded onto other monster cars.
Right.
But it somehow has a streak of realism because of this that's kind of fun.
Although I feel like we should do a public service announcement and say, please don't, no matter how cool it looks in the movie, don't paint your face chrome with spray paint. It's probably not good for you.
Well, agree to disagree. I actually bought the coffee table book of the conceptual art for Fury Road.
Oh wow!
It's it's magnificent. And what's crazy is some of the illustrations are dated like 1994.
Yeah,
Right. That's how long Miller's been trying to get this thing going. And
Well, apparently he came very close to this thing being greenlit, and things were all moving in the right direction when 9/11 happened.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
and-
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, going to even though Namibia is 2,000 miles away from any the countries involved in 9/11, it just wasn't, the money wasn't there all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So there you go, a fake religion from a great movie. Yeah.
But it was worth the wait. A great film. Everybody enjoy. Happy birthday, Doug. May you arrive in Valhalla, shiny, chrome,
Yes.
and all
Thank
that
you.
stuff. I can't remember exactly the rest. So, all right. Well, with that, let's hit the gas.
Moving on.